Welcome to More Than Words, a podcast about treating the whole child brought to you by the Reading and Language Learning Center. I'm your host, Tristan, and today I'm joined by founder and CEO of MVS Educational Services, Meg Shah, to discuss how parents can proactively partner with schools. Hi, Meg. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much, Tristan, for having me on. It is such a pleasure to come on here and speak about how parents can start to build collaborative relationships with schools from jump, especially when they're noticing that maybe there might be a gap or hurdle in their child's learning that they need to overcome.
Yeah. Well, we're very excited for you to be here. What a great topic. And, something that I think parents are constantly looking for info on. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Well, let's start with an introduction, Meg. Can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Meg Shah. I have been in the DC area, specifically Washington, DC, for the last 20 years. I came here for law school, and I actually, in a former life, practiced law
Ooh.
for some time. And it was not filling my bucket in terms of I knew I always wanted to work with kids and families.
Yeah.
And that brought me to applying to a alternative teaching program for my certification through a DC charter school. And I was in the DC charter school network for 13-ish years, teacher, special educator, special education coordinator, and eventually left in a school admin leader role and
Wow.
brought me to this exciting venture that I'm on. I founded MVS Ed in 2024 on the premise of helping families and schools bridge the gap to build collaborative plans on behalf of kids to help them grow and learn in both academics and social emotional learning.
Wow. Oh, how amazing. What like a fun journey to go from lawyer, which gives you kind of like an advocacy background, if you will,
Hmm.
um, and then into the school systems and DC public charter schools too, which, we have some experience there.
Right.
And then, being the amazing human that you now are, like you said, on this fun new venture of getting people what they need, getting people the info they need. You're the inside scoop in so many ways.
Oh, I try to be. I try to spread the good word that it doesn't have to be adversarial. I
Yeah.
think the biggest jump there is how do we switch from being reactive to being proactive? We see that
Mm,
there's a problem, and how do we start having the conversations? And not only having the conversation, but having an honest conversation and getting
absolutely.
at the nitty gritty. And I would argue actually that that's where the lawyer skill comes in, is
Oh,
like that nitty
wow.
gritty piece. Like, how do we stay objective and
Right.
have our questioning be targeted towards what we're seeing and helping bridge that gap one step at a time?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, this is going to be fun. I'm
It's
excited
going to
for
be a
this.
grand old time.
So let's hop into some of our questions here. So, a lot of parents notice like really small things at home that don't seem to show up at school, right?
Right.
So, what are some of those early signs that parents should trust even when there's no diagnosis or any like school concern?
Sure. I think that the big thing to think about is school and home are two different places, and how a kid shows up at school is not always going to be how they show up at home. So,
Yeah.
understanding that, right, home is hopefully a child's safest place. They are with
Right.
their safest humans, and that is where they can be their best and worst self.
Right.
And so, I think if you see that your kid is holding it together at school and they are like doing their very, very best and they are on all the time. And then
Right.
they come home and it is just like this, they're so tired.
Yeah.
They, and frequent meltdowns, like aversion to academic activities all of a sudden.
Right.
Um, and you're fighting this uphill battle. That's showing that like there's a lot of effort being put in at the school level. And like you're going to see it, of course, at the beginning of the school year
Right.
or after a long break, those transitions make sense, right? But you should
Right.
only see it for about a week, 2 weeks. But if you are experiencing it every day and it's like
Right.
October, November, your flag should start going up. Like
Right.
something is going on here. Avoidance, like all of a sudden you're hearing your kiddo say like, I don't want to go to school, or
Mm.
I feel like a stomach ache is happening.
Mm.
And remembering that those physical symptoms sometimes are an indicator of anxiety
Right.
or stress in some sort of way. That might be something that might pique your interest and
Right.
you want to follow through on. And then discrepancies in effort versus output. So, what I
Mm.
mean by that is a child gets 1 page of homework sent home. You think, okay, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, right? Like that's your normal gauge. And you're probably
Right.
expecting it to go a little bit faster than that, but like you're like, oh, 20 minutes is acceptable.
Right.
If you're now at like, you have to sit next to them, you are coaching them through every problem. What should have taken, you know, up to 20 minutes is now you're now at an hour and you're like, what
Oof.
is going
What's
on?
happening?
Right. Right. Those are definitely instances where you want to follow up. And I also think you, a parent, a caretaker, an adult, a trusted an adult outside of school, if you're a like gut is telling you something, if you
Yeah.
sort of have alarm bells going off in your head, trust that and start just collecting some notes and thinking about what is it that I might want to talk to the school about. Because, like, I
Right.
think what it is we don't have enough data to form an exact thought or an exact question. And that's where hesitancy lies.
Yeah.
And there's trust, there's inherent trust that your teachers, the school, have your best interests at heart, and they do,
Right.
and that teachers are stressed and dealing with their own things, they don't need an added problem, and so then maybe you hold back
Right.
from reaching out and just don't have the conversation and see where it can lead. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to evaluations and a diagnosis or anything like that. It might be really small tweaks that need to happen, and then you've like headed it off at the pass, and now your child is set up for success for that
Right.
school year or that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So that's interesting. So you said feeling like it's not big enough is kind of what tends to hold parents back. Are there other things that hold them back from reaching out?
Yes, there are, right? Like,
Okay.
I think that there is the wait and see trap, right?
Oh
This is
yeah.
just a stage.
Right.
They're going to grow out of it.
We see this all the time.
They, right. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh, this stage is very long. Or
Right.
maybe this is not a stage, right? There, while maybe less so, there's still a stigma that comes with
Yeah.
being diagnosed with any sort of diagnosis, right?
Anything. Yeah.
And I think it's less and less. I think that I have found as a parent and in this generation, there is more of an openness about it. I think social media has helped in that, like this, like
Right.
understanding of no one child is the same. No one child, like every child doesn't need the same thing. Like, how do we
Right.
get kids what they need? And that my hope is that the stigma continues to decrease.
Right.
But there still is a fear like, what does this label mean? Does this label mean that my child is not going to have the same opportunities that a quote unquote typical child gets? Is
Right.
it going to hold them back? Is it going to influence their social like relationships? And so
Right.
I think that causes some fear for parents and caretakers.
Yeah.
I think also as a parent, we want to be, and a caretaker, I use the term parent to mean all those things. Any adult
Right.
who cares for a child, right? I think that for us, there's this fear that maybe we're not doing enough.
Mm.
We have to be there more. Maybe this is our fault. We feel guilt about that.
Right.
I think there's some of that, and then some sort of deference to teachers and schools. Uh,
Right.
this is their expertise. They know typical child development. They
Right.
know how how to help kids learn, even if they learn in different ways.
Right.
And if the teachers aren't seeing the same thing, if they're not mentioning it to me, maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill and I should step
Sure.
back. Right. And again, I just want to reiterate, like, to families, yes, schools and teachers are experts, but they're not experts on your child.
Right.
You are the expert on your child. And
Right.
if you sense that something is off, you're potentially going to be the first person who catches it. And you
Right.
should trust in that and seek out the resources that you may need to just better ask the questions you want to ask and get the answers that you need.
Absolutely. So what happens when like a parent is finally ready to reach out? They've realized, they're like, I think I'm really seeing something. What is that first email or conversation? What does it look like? What does it sound like in a way that is, inviting collaboration instead of being really defensive?
Yeah, I think that, you know, there is value in the sandwich, which
Oh,
is,
yes.
right. Some people are like, just hit it straight on. I think there is value in naming like a strength or something that your child is enjoying in school. I think that when you lead with there's a problem, it
Hmm.
automatically puts people on edge.
Right.
And I think that there is a lot of value in naming something that you've noticed a teacher doing well or the school is doing well and what your child is doing well, right?
Yeah.
Like school is not a singular thing.
Right.
It is imperative to take the emotion out of it, I think.
Mm,
So the fear, the anger, the confusion, like, and it is best to be as specific and non-judgmental in your observations. So instead of saying he's struggling with reading, that is really broad,
yes.
right? Is he struggling with sounding out words? Is
Mm,
he struggling with prosody or the tone and the cadence in which he's reading? Is he struggling with comprehension? Like what is it specifically? So instead of he's struggling with reading, I'm noticing it takes him a very long time to sound out three-letter words while he's at home reading.
right.
I notice that he has not memorized his sight words, even though we're practicing them every night and he sees them in books, he still struggles to recall those words, right?
Right.
Though that's way more specific. And that's something for the teacher to then be like, do I see that? How do I prompt them? Is there a tool that I'm using in the classroom that maybe they can transfer to home? I think it's way more specific
Right.
than he's struggling with reading.
Right.
And I think as I was talking about having a cue for the teacher to latch on to, like, he's struggling sounding out three-letter words, it's
Hmm.
also asking, this is what we're doing at home.
Hmm.
Name what you've been doing. Is there something different we should be doing? Is
Right.
there a strategy that you specifically, teacher, are using in the classroom? How can we bridge this gap and start doing the same thing? Because it's actually the
Right.
repetition of a direction, the repetition of a cue, the repetition that is going to build automaticity in a child
Right.
faster. The more
Right.
we as adults are using shared language, and that shared language is from home to school, school to home,
Yeah.
coaches, whomever, right?
Right.
You are going to see a faster uptake because they are repeating that skill over and over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love the sandwich. I remember when I was in choir, my choir director in high school would be like, a compliment sandwich is a great way to like get things across because you
Mhm.
start off with something positive, you say a growing place, and then you end with something positive. What's not to love?
Right. And I think also, right, it is this invitation that, hey, I see the best in you. I
Yeah,
hope you see the best in me. And
absolutely.
like, let's work together as opposed to there's this problem because when you lead with a problem, then there's this reading into intention, I think,
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
are they upset with me? Have I failed them? Like teachers are doing a lot. They
Yeah,
like 99.9% of teachers have signed up because they want to help children grow and learn
right.
and face the world that is beyond school.
Yeah.
And so when we are hearing that we've failed in some way, it's hard not to become defensive or
Yeah.
reactive, which is the exact opposite of what we want. We want this to be the least invasive
Right.
approach for parents, for teachers, for schools, for kids.
Yeah.
That will always be the best.
Right, exactly. So what happens when so parents reached out and they, have started this conversation, but let's say I don't know who they're talking to, either the teacher or other school support says, "We're really not seeing that at school." So how can the parent respond, especially when they feel like they don't have necessarily quote unquote formal data yet?
hmm I think that one, the we're not seeing that at school
Hmm.
could be valid, right? We talked about
Right.
earlier on that kids show up in schools differently than they show up at home. So I
Right.
think it's naming that. I'm so glad to feel like that John is not showing up in that way at school.
Sure.
However, my experience is that it's taking considerable effort to support him at home.
Right.
And so it makes me wonder if there is a strategy that you're using
Right.
at school that is going to benefit him at
Right.
home. Do you have a suggestion on how we can approach this work or we can approach this skill so that we're feeling the same success that you are,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I think pushing towards requesting a comparative look. Ask the teacher again what specific supports or cues they're using that might
Right.
help you at home. And then
Yeah.
also, if they're not seeing it at school,
Hmm.
they are collecting formal data, right? Can we go over
Yeah.
whatever assessments that he has done with you? If we're thinking specific to reading, can we look at any spelling or phonics assessments? Can we look at iReady or NWA MAP or whatever the diagnostic testing is there? Any benchmark assessments, DIBBLES? Like, can we look at all of that together so that
Right.
I can see that he is performing on grade level? And then, like, let's talk about what a reasonable next step is. Because what if it is that you're just expecting them to be at reading chapter book level
Right.
and those are the books you're putting in front of them, and then there is true fatigue and
Yeah.
big feelings because they're not yet ready to tackle that and you're not quite sure where the in between is. Like, I think it is asking the questions that will get you to close the gap between what's happening at school and what's happening at home.
Yeah.
And so it's just getting a better understanding and asking those questions. And you have every right to ask those questions. And it can be piecemeal. Like this conversation should happen over time. It doesn't
Right.
have to happen in a 15-minute parent teacher conference or
Yeah.
something like that. It can happen over email. It can happen over a short phone call. And I think that's the biggest thing. Don't wait for the parent teacher conference.
Right.
Stuff happens, conferences get delayed. I mean, here in DC, right, we had Snowcrete.
Oh my
And
gosh.
as a result of all the snow days and to still be able to let out of school on time, we lost our spring parent teacher conferences. And
Oh
it's not,
wow.
and several children probably don't, like, families don't have that touch point beyond a report card.
Right.
And so, like, don't wait for those days. Reach out early and reach out often.
Yeah.
It is all in your tone, it
Yeah.
is all in your approach. If you approach it with a deep breath and a calm demeanor, the teacher is going to meet you with the same energy. If
Right.
you are really agitated, like you call them after having a really hard homework session and your feelings and
Yeah.
emotions are elevated, it can go differently,
Right.
even if that's not your intention,
Right.
right? So taking a body check too is always helpful. And then if you're not sure how to respond, like, there are people who can help you formulate those thoughts.
Right.
You know, I'm happy to have those conversations with anybody. There are many other human beings besides me who do this work. several of us offer free consultations
Yeah.
and have free resources up and about. So, thinking about how you can take some time to just feel like you're prepared. The more
Right.
prepared you feel, the better the conversation is going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love like the way you're describing this. It feels like you as the parent are inviting like the teacher to be a detective with you in
Yes.
figuring out like what's going on and how to move forward. Not
Hmm.
like just pointing something out and like expecting the world from the teacher, right? Which is not even necessarily what a parent is doing, but sometimes
Right.
the way that it's presented might come across that way. But I love this frame of just like getting curious and exploring that with the teacher to move forward together.
And I want to build on that idea, Tristan, like this idea that you're a detective and not leaning on just one person to solve it. Again,
Right.
I want to say this over and over. There's a reason, there's a phrase that says it takes a village,
Yes.
right? It
Right.
takes a village. It's you, it's the school, it's grandma, grandpa, tutors, speech pathologists,
Yes.
you
All of it.
therapists. Like there are so many resources and there's so many humans in the world who can rally behind a kid and like get them where they need to be their best self, right? And that's
Right.
not necessarily Harvard or Yale. But the other piece about it, when you're thinking about being curious and being a detective, you're looking, not only are you looking for clues, but then you're like creating a plan, right?
Right.
And when you're creating the plan, it's not we're going to save the world or we're going to save this child. It
Right.
is Sam can't read three-letter words. He struggles with the vowels E and I.
Yeah.
These are the two supports that we're going to do, or these are the cues we're going to give him. This is the practice we're going to give him. And we're going to check back in 3 weeks and we're going to see if there's growth, because that's the goal. Growth is the
Right.
goal.
Right.
Perfection is not. We
Right.
all make mistakes. Growth is the goal. And it's how are we measuring that growth? And instead of it being quarter to quarter, semester to semester, we might need more checkpoints more frequently, more updates to know that we're making the growth. And in that
Right.
discussion with the teacher, with the provider, with whomever, it's breaking. When I said nitty gritty before, it's like getting really specific on that. What do the
Right.
supports look like? What do the supports sound like? When am I implementing them? When are you implementing them?
Right.
And then saying, okay, every 3 weeks, we're going to check back in. It's going
Right.
to be we're going to set a date and time now. Like we're going to hold that sacred. And if you're doing it, it can be 10 minutes as opposed to 2 hours, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so the more proactive and the more collaborative it feels, then you're moving out of this reactive, adversarial, litigious, argumentative space where
Right.
someone inevitably is walking away feeling like I dropped the ball,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm loving this. Number one, growth is the goal. I feel like it should be like a sticker. I don't know. It needs to go somewhere. People need to just like see it and be like, oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
not perfection. Like growth is the goal here.
Yeah.
And then I also love just like the small chunks of things, right? I think sometimes it's overwhelming. You think, like you said at the very beginning, right? Get specific about what you're seeing as opposed to being
Hmm.
like, Timmy can't read. Okay, that's not helpful, right? And if you get it down to that small, small thing to say, this is the goal, let's check it in 3 weeks, that doesn't seem very intimidating. That
Right.
seems doable. That seems like, okay, great. We're going to start here and go from there. And then it brings down the anxiety.
And I think you can be like, when you name it so specifically, you can see it more often,
Yeah.
right? And not only that, like, let's loop Timmy in,
Yeah.
right? Like, let Timmy be like, yeah, that is a problem area. We have this goal of 3 weeks, 21 days. Maybe I have a calendar that is like, I practiced it, I'm earning, like, and I do a little activity at the end of each week that shows growth, and I get a little prize. I get a sticker, I
Mhm.
get a celebration, I get a certificate. Who knows?
Yeah.
But what that, like, if I am Timmy and I'm getting that reinforcement from the people around me that I'm growing,
Right.
My internal motivation is going to grow.
Yep.
My pride is going to grow. My confidence
Yep.
is going to grow. And then, it might be something, it might be a bigger problem. We might have more and more steps. Or
Sure.
now Timmy is off to the races and he is like, all right, give me that chapter book, mom. Like,
Yeah.
I figured it out. I realized it's how my mouth looks or what I need to do to form that letter. And I think that makes the difference. The more like everybody is bought into the plan, including the child, you're going to feel even more success.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. This is wonderful. Okay, so let's say that the conversation, parents started the conversation and then they're starting to feel like they're being dismissed or the conversation has stalled.
Mhm.
What are some of the ways that parents can gently like redirect the conversation without escalating any tension?
A couple of different things. I think one is ask for clarification, right?
Mm, yeah,
The teacher, the school, the provider is saying, no, everything is going the way it's supposed to be. Okay, then help me understand. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? Let's go
sure.
over the assessments and stuff. Like, help me understand what the milestones are that we're
Yeah,
looking for. And help me understand what's a reasonable next step. What's a reasonable expectation to have? Like, if
right,
if he is or she is growing the way they're supposed to.
right,
And the thing is, if they are performing on grade level as expected, developmentally appropriate, whatever the phrase is, right? That you're
right,
seeing, be like, great. My goal is to ensure that we're being proactive, that we're staying on this trajectory. What's
right.
one small thing we can monitor together over the
Mm,
next few weeks where I can see it too, or I can feel it too?
right.
And I think the other thing is create a paper trail.
Yeah,
So, with the best of intentions, right? But shifting it to email or it like if you're having phone conversations or conversations at dismissal, in person things, put that down in writing
yep,
in an email just to recap what we talked about.
yeah,
Just so that I am like on the same page. These were my takeaways. Is there anything else that I should be considering
right.
or that we should be considering? And then also it's okay to ask just in case, is it possible that these conversations also get logged in? Some schools use Power School or
Right.
whatever system a school uses to track communication with families.
Right.
And before it used to be paper files, but that this can be part of Timmy's file, Sam's file, Sarah's file,
Right.
so that if something does come up the road, we have a starting baseline point,
Right.
right? We're not starting from scratch.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And the other thing is, there are other resources. There are several places that provide screeners. You can talk to your pediatrician. Again, like your community is actually like a vast resource. Like if your parent friends are great, if there's a school PTO chat, like you can always ask like, "Hey, I have noticed a problem. If anybody has any resources, can you point me in the right direction?" And when we talk about stigma or a label for your child and stuff, I think the more neutral you are in that observation and the ask for resources, you're avoiding that. You're just being honest about what's happening. And I bet you there are so many other parents in that chat who are wondering the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And there's also like in DC, there's DC Urban Moms and Dads. There are other
Mm,
Facebook groups, right? Like there are other places where you can be pointed at the resources.
yeah.
Don't hesitate to reach out because um, those screeners may help you pinpoint the point. Like just don't wait after you've started the discussion that there's a problem, and then after like 6 weeks you still feel like there's a problem.
Yeah.
Address it. And you can even ask the school like, hey, I know that you say that everything is progressing as normal.
Right.
There's something I do feel like there is a gap. Are there providers that you would recommend for screeners, or is there another place that I can look to get an additional evaluation or reach
Right.
out to help? And I think there's a lot of value in that, and the school isn't going to take it personally either, right?
No.
Like they're just going to be like that's a parent, that's a caretaker who is just looking out for their kiddo.
Right.
Now, if you say it, since you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Right.
Two different things, right?
Different things.
Asking for additional resources, like that's not, there's no harm in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned, like just talking to your community. We recently had a mental health therapist on, Stephanie Kaiser, and she said the same thing. We were talking about mental health for parents, and she
Mhm.
was like, talk to your other parent friends. Like,
Oh my gosh.
it's that simple. Not that simple, right? But like, sometimes it can be that simple to just be like, hi, friend, how are you feeling about this? Or what are you noticing in this way?
Right.
And, just the value of community.
Sure. And here's the thing. I think that there are two. There is
Yeah,
the community. There is reach out to your community and ask for help for sure. Asking for help is different than criticism and gossip culture or venting.
absolutely.
That is not what the chat is for, right?
I'm
Like
glad you said this.
the chat is not to for this gotcha moment, because at the end of the day, it's looking for there's not one especially if it is a developmental thing. No one is to blame. That is
Yeah,
just the way the brain is wired,
yeah,
right? Like it is no one's fault.
no,
And so if blame is going to prevent you from moving forward and actually like solving the problem at hand. Don't let, like, Brene Brown has this fantastic
yes,
video about how our first instinct is to go to blame,
right,
and shift the responsibility off of us. And like, but then if you shift the responsibility off of you, what ends up happening is you don't address it. You
right,
just, right. And like overcoming that blame. Like, yes, your first instinct is to be like, oh, this person or this thing or whatever. And then what's the next step is being like, okay, but this is still a barrier.
right,
How do we overcome it together so
yeah,
that we're, setting everyone up for success?
for success, exactly. And you mentioned together, so like the collaboration, what does that look like in those like early conversations before anything formal, like, if you're requesting IEP testing or anything like that, or IEPs, you get my point.
Yeah, I I think that we talked about this, like setting touch points
Yeah,
early. Brief biweekly email or a homeschool communication log. Maybe it is a a picture of, the work that shows
yeah,
improvement. It's just sharing the victories, right? Like, is so important because
yeah,
science shows, right, that more positive reinforcement is what's going to lead towards success and building internal motivation, right?
right.
We, in a school that I used to work at, we used to call it shamuing. You need,
Shampooing?
yes, because it's like training,
Yeah,
like these are training a pet or whomever. Like we all
right.
need at least 5 to 8 positive pieces of feedback for
Oh,
every
absolutely.
one like piece of adjusting feedback or
Okay,
negative. So
right,
if you're sharing those victories more often, like the high five, great. And paired with the high five, Timmy, it was great that you sounded out the E perfectly that time. Instead of saying you said eh. High
right,
fives. Awesome job, right? Like pairing that piece, that high five with the actual skill that they're mastering is
right,
building connections in their brain that, oh, every time I do that, I'm going to get a high five. Every
right,
time I do that, I'm going to get a shout out. They're going to tell my mom, I want to do it more.
right.
So sharing the victories, informal check ins, those are great things to put in place before anything formal happens. Some schools like also have a MTSS system, multi-tiered system, where if you're in what's called tier 2 or tier 3, you're getting additional supports beyond what the typical student gets.
Okay.
And with that, there's generally there should be communication to the parent that
Okay.
your child is entered into tier 2 or tier 3. These are the additional supports they're going to get. This is what it looks like. This is the cadence of reports that you're going to get.
Okay. Yeah.
If you find out that your child has been being pulled for small groups or something like that that you did not know about, asking for those check-ins
Yeah.
is really important. And like, life happens.
Sure.
Like, everyone is busy. You may have missed the email. Who knows, right?
Right.
There's so much that goes into place, but the biweekly email or the tri-weekly email is the best because it's in writing,
Yeah.
and it's just, if you move on to a next stage, if there is a next stage after that, all of that is data. And
Yeah.
that's the main thing. It's not, again, this thing of gotcha or whatever, but if there is no progress, if there is minimal progress, that is data for whomever is going to next work with your kiddo in a screener or an evaluation,
Right.
and can use that as a baseline of like just getting to know the kid and the learning
Yeah.
that needs to happen. It saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, like, pivoting a bit, if you're the parent and you're like, I want to reach out to the school, but I don't want to be seen as that parent, like the parent
Mm,
that, teachers go, ugh, I can't believe blah, blah, blah is whatever, reaching out to me
yeah.
again. How can they advocate really clearly while still keeping that positive relationship with the school?
Um, Being a solution seeker.
Mm,
So, coming to the table with questions and suggestions, not a list of complaints.
yeah.
Um, when you come to the table with questions and suggestions, then you're narrowing the scope of the conversation a little bit, sharing those questions and suggestions ahead of time before the meeting, because
Right.
then the school and the teacher can like think about capacity, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
uh there is The reality is that there are 20 to 30 kids in any given classroom, and
Hmm.
understanding that like the teacher is going to try and dispense their time evenly and equitably. And so understanding the reality of that, and like
Yeah.
just getting a scope, getting really clear on like what that looks like, I think is really important. So just getting a clear picture of what a typical school day looks like for any given kid. Like,
Hmm.
if we're in reading, like, what does reading look like?
Yeah.
How, like, how much of this is whole group learning? How much of this is independent work? How much of this is shared work? Where is Timmy faltering?
Right.
If there is a hiccup for Timmy, understanding how often is he going to be able to get those prompts or feedback
Yeah.
is a valid question. I think understanding, like, again, any question, concern, they're all valid.
Right.
And how that gets presented shifts how it is responded to.
Right.
And understanding that. And I would say, like, when you're talking about that quote unquote parent,
Hmm.
I can only speak for me, right?
Sure.
In my experience as an educator, is that for me, and this happened rarely, but that parent was more aggressive
Mm,
than collaborative,
right.
and not respectful of teacher capacity and
Right.
whatnot. I think a tried and true thing, which we've also talked about a little bit earlier, is like, when am I reaching out to the teacher? Am I
Mm,
reaching out to the teacher when I'm at a level 10? My heart is
right.
beating really fast. I feel really hot. I'm agitated.
Right.
I'm having trouble articulating my thoughts. I'm in between getting out of the car to make dinner. Like, when,
Right.
or am I reaching out to the teacher when I have a moment to like collect myself
Right.
and have a conversation as opposed to a gotcha moment?
Yeah.
I think is really important to
Yeah.
as like a gut check for adults. Like, if you have this perception that maybe you are becoming that parent, I think it is taking a moment to um, just check yourself in how you are relating
Right.
to the teacher, and then asking yourself, like, if I am not getting where I need to be or where we need to be, is there someone who can help me? And if I can sense that this is going off the rails, like, you can also stop. Like, if
Yeah.
you feel yourself in the moment, in the meeting, getting frustrated and like feeling like you're going in circles, like, you have a couple of options. You can name that very calmly. Hey, can we take a beat? I need to take a breath. I feel as though we're talking in circles and maybe I am not asking a clear enough question.
Right.
uh can we, like, we've said XYZ. I need a minute to process. Maybe you do too. Why don't we like check back in 24 hours?
Sure.
And naming that, because if we're going on the premise of we should check our gut, like, if your gut is saying I might be that parent, naming that too, like, hey, am I being that parent?
Right.
Right? Like, in my brain, I feel like I'm being that parent, and like, what can I do to get out of, like, do you perceive me as such? Is
Right.
there something? And if they're like, you are being that parent and you just got to trust us, like, you can also say, well, that's also not enough, and I might need to look elsewhere, and that's also okay.
Yeah. For
That is
sure.
okay. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're going to do what you need to do and you perceive as best for your kid,
Right.
and best for your mental health. Like, if
Yeah.
you don't want to feel like you're going in circles, so if you need to
Yeah.
figure out a solution, like, and you need to look elsewhere, that is perfectly valid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned like teacher capacity, and sometimes the need for the kid is like not necessarily within the capacity of the school, and that has nothing to do with the school. It's just the fact that like the teacher has 30 kids.
Right. Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have one more question for you, and it's just
Okay.
if you could give parents one or two like go-to phrases or even like mindset shifts that they can carry into any like school conversation that they have, what would that be?
Um, I want to be a partner.
Mm,
Asking, what does that look like? What does that
mm,
sound like? How can I transfer that to home?
yeah,
Those are great questions. I think the what does that look like? What does that sound like? Questions them is the most helpful
yeah,
when you can't envision it. If you can see it, then you know what's happening. If you can't
right,
see it, asking questions that can help you formulate a clear picture of how it's supposed to go or what it's supposed to sound like or what progress is supposed to be, you're going to be that much more clear and be able to carry it into um, outside of school.
yeah. I love that. And I think it helps the person receiving it, right? Like the teacher can then easily be like, "Oh, okay, now we are on the same page because I've explained to
Mm-hmm.
you what this looks like or what it sounds like."
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is, when you think about mind shift, it, as opposed to it being parent or me versus the school,
Right.
it's us adults
Right.
versus the challenge,
Right.
versus the obstacle, versus the problem. Um, Constantly remembering that the adults are all on the same team
Yeah.
and are in this because we want what's best for a child,
Right.
and we're all trying to solve the same problem. And if we can create a unified approach as opposed to all of us doing different things,
Yeah.
and we may all need to do different things, but then knowing what the different things are,
Yeah.
right? That's going to help tremendously.
Yeah. Oh, this has been fabulous. This is all really amazing info and I think like very actionable like tools that people can take away from this and just, implement immediately. So thank you so much for being here, Meg. This has been fantastic.
This has been awesome. I really appreciate it. And if anybody is looking for question stems or how to have those conversations,
Yeah.
they should check out my Instagram, mbs.ed, or my website, www.mbsed.com, my LinkedIn, Meg Shah. And there are links to some free resources on how to collaborate via email, how to have impromptu conferences, anything that can help get the ball rolling for families to have collaborative conversations in helping their child grow.
Yeah. Awesome. And I realized I never asked you your website and thank you for putting that because I'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome. Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much to the audience for listening. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a little rating and review. It helps other folks find the podcast, and we'll chat with you next time.